Do you want to have bedtime stories read to you? Well, for 30 days free, you can get an Audible trial through us. You get a free audiobook and 2 Audible originals. Go to audibletrial.com/YAGS. That is YAGS for yet another geek show. Hello and welcome back to yet another geek show where, if you're listening to this, I don't care how, just move the glass a little bit to the right if you can hear me. I'm your host, Alex Ecker.
I'm your host, Alden Munnell.
Oh boy, Hereditary.
Alex, you don't do well with horror.
Kind of. It's one of those things where I've gotten better with horror movies in like the past 10 years that you've known me. I think the thing for me is understanding that there's going to be music cues. For some reason, like the noise freaks me out more than the actual visual, which is funny because I can handle horror games for the most part, which we need to play some of those horror games that we have. I won't play them in VR because absolutely not. I don't need to crap MP myself at the same time.
I'll hardly play them at all.
But yeah, this movie, I don't know how I feel. I don't dislike it and I don't like it.
Okay, so I have a mixed feeling here too, because my praises are really high, but my criticisms are also really high.
Yeah. Like this movie, like it was done very well. I don't know. We should just probably get into it. So like I mean, as opposed to the Jackie Brown discussion we just posted where our feelings were mixed because our praises and criticisms were both low. Nothing particularly great here and nothing particularly bad. Right.
No, this movie has the same mixed average because there's things that are really good and things that are really bad. So
right. Something I didn't write in my notes that I want to bring up is I love the visual effects they do with the dollhouse in real life. Not just the mom like making up the stuff, but her like the actual like it's like a transition immediately from like the dollhouse into what we should be seeing.
Sure.
And then like the day to night sequences, how they're just instant, like that kind of stuff. I really enjoyed that. It was very, it made you uncomfortable.
Yeah. There's some clever editing going on here and there. And her being a miniature artist, there's kind of a trope in horror movies of including like a miniature of the haunted house that you're in. I know I've seen that in several movies, but I don't think I've seen a movie where someone is a miniature artist and there's a whole bunch of them.
And not to mention, the miniature artist had nothing to do with the horror element, which I found kind of refreshing.
Sure. Okay.
Like it was nothing,
just... Like it was all like the miniatures are haunted or
right. There was no like creepy doll head moving to look at the camera and stupid shit like that. It was just, it was more a reflection on what had been going on in the movie, which I kind of appreciated that.
It was just a tool to get into her head and to create some unique visuals, but not to actually create the scares.
Right.
So that's unique. That's cool.
Yeah. Since I have quite a few notes here, I'm just going to kind of lump them together. Okay. In my notes, we start off with a funeral. The grandma wasn't a liked character. She had a creepy necklace, and the creepy cult people, it was obvious that there was something culty going on. Like right off the get-go. I don't know if that was something that you realized.
It's yes, and it's also the thing that bothers me about this movie because
it's obvious.
It's not, well, no, that's not my problem. My problem is that this movie is a movie that could be utterly terrifying on its own. Maybe not terrifying, maybe disturbing's the word. It could be effective without any of the supernatural stuff, and honestly it takes away from it.
Yeah.
This is a better movie if you take away all the supernatural, and that's what bothers me.
Yeah.
The whole sequence from the death of Charlie to her funeral is one of the most disturbing sequences I've seen in all of cinema. It's utterly captivating, and it's the thing I remember most from watching this around the time it released.
Yeah.
And it had nothing to do with anything supernatural.
Oh, it totally did.
And then the whole family's reaction to that after the fact, like anything scary regarding like the relationship between the family after the fact, the the disturbing stuff is how do we exist as a family from this point, and then any like the mother sleepwalking and is she gonna kill her son, yes or no, and
right,
none of that requires the supernatural.
No,
until they reveal it, unless you noticed it coming ahead of time. It's a normal, rooted in reality, no supernatural needed movie, and it was better that way.
That's fair. But till Charlie's death, which I want to come back and talk about Charlie. It was totally supernatural, dude. The telephone pole had the creepy necklace symbol. It was the cult symbol. It was carved on it, and that's what she got killed on.
Sure, and they're hinting at the existence of the supernatural for you to notice it, but that actual event doesn't require the supernatural in the story.
No,
it's there because they put it there, but ultimately the beginning of this story, not as in the first sequence, but the catalyst of the rest of the plot, the catalyst is brother accidentally kills his sister.
Yeah.
We didn't need the supernatural for it. It's in there, and you may or may not notice it, but it doesn't need to be there.
Right. Okay.
And then, until, the third act, the rest of the movie is about this family reacting to the rest of the family. And again, supernatural doesn't need to be there.
Right.
It is there because they said it's there, but it doesn't need to be.
Right. No,
the events of this movie can happen on their own.
I'm going to read you what I wrote exactly for my next note, because I want to talk about Charlie now, if that's cool. I put, Charlie is a creepy little shit who is allergic to nuts.
That's an appropriate note. Yeah.
But it's not, she's just, like her outfit being like very like, she's too little for the outfit. It's just a long, big ass baggy orange sweatshirt and
just
some
feels
pants.
out of place all the time.
It feels, yeah. Like they did a very good job of disassociating her from just her general public. The noise she made, the noise, like that immediately made me feel like she had like Tourette's.
It could be okay. That creative choice. I don't know if that was a matter of
needing a sound for us to trigger back to, or
yeah, I think it's more about that. I don't think that it's about speaking to her character. I don't think it says anything in particular about her. I think a lot of kids have a strange noise they make that they latch on to.
Fair enough.
I used to make a weird movement with my jaw that made a clicking sound as a kid, and people would yell at me to stop it. It's just, I think that's just a thing that happens to kids. And so I don't think it was there to say anything about her. I think it was just there so they could do clever things with it for the rest of the movie.
Yeah. Let me get on to the creepy little shit aspect. For one, the grandma was obsessed with her, and the grandma also wanted her to be a boy. I remember she was messing with a toy that looks like she made herself in a class, and the teacher kind of like doesn't scold or yell at her, but she's like, hey, you want to do this instead? Like kind of being like passive aggressive about a quiz that they were supposed to take. And then that bird just thinks it's invincible and dive bombs into a window. Part of me felt like that was like the evil grandma spirit, like trying to get at the teacher, like, hey, listen, don't talk to my granddaughter that way.
It certainly could have been that. And it's also whatever the meaning and intention there.
Yeah.
And I don't know if there's been a discussion or an interview or maybe a commentary track where they've clarified their intention with each little supernatural instance. But I guess my aversion to working the supernatural into a story when you don't really need it, specifically when you don't really need it, because of course I love plenty of stories that involve the supernatural. But my problem is it lowers the stakes for me when you put me in a universe where just literally anything can happen at any moment because magic. Yeah.
Oh, trust me, we're going to get there because I have a lot of points.
The story of brother accidentally kills sister and it tragically wrecks family. It's compelling enough on its own. There's enough there in just feeling that tension and watching what happens to the family that you don't need to include this supernatural stuff where ultimately I don't care what the intentions were or the specifics or who was part of this cult or why that bird was there. I don't care about any of it because it could be anything. You're just throwing a random collection of images at me, honestly.
Okay, that's fair.
The mother like sawing off her own head near the end, like it's just a creepy image, and it is creepy and it is effective, but I don't care what it means. I don't care what the symbolism is. I don't care why it's happening, because you could have thrown any creepy image at me there.
Well, that one makes sense to the magic. Like, it actually does.
I'm not saying it doesn't make sense. I'm saying I don't care what it means, because you could do anything at that point. Yeah. Well, it's just how throwing the supernatural works in.
Like, I get what you're saying. I will forgive that beheading scene, which I did have in my notes later on, that I said that beheading was creepy. Because they needed the heads of 3 different generations. And yeah, you're right. If it were just a movie about tragic family shit, it would have been pretty damn good. But it feels awfully too convenient for the magic in this movie. You know what I mean? A lot of the points that I have feel obviously too convenient. Like, for example, let's go to the bird again. Charlie takes the pair of scissors and cuts off the bird's head. I also found it kind of funny that she lost her head later on.
Okay. I didn't think of that. Sure.
Yeah. But the thing is, she was playing with that bird's head, putting it on that toy in her treehouse, where later on in the movie, the mom goes and sleeps in that treehouse for like a week, it feels like. How did she not see all this creepy shit in this treehouse? I mean, did you catch that?
I see, because this is a supernatural horror movie, I'm inclined to respond by thinking, I don't know, there's demons in her head or something. She's not paying attention.
Yeah, but
now I'm inclined to believe she's not going crazy on her own in response to the events of her daughter. Now I'm inclined to believe she's going crazy because, I don't know, demons decided she should be crazy. And now it doesn't matter. Well, and that's the problem.
This is before she meets Joan. So, like, the supernatural shit really doesn't spike up until then. I don't know if it was me trying to look for shit in the movie, but like, I seen a lot of like the grandma and Charlie in the movie. Like when it was dark, before like they wanted you to focus on like a light.
Yeah.
I don't know if that was something. Okay.
For sure.
I put
and it's a supernatural thing that doesn't need to be supernatural, because if your whole world is rocked upside down by the loss of these people, imagining them being there when they're not is a normal, regular thing that doesn't need a horror movie explanation.
Right. Absolutely. And
actually, in reality, it's kind of still ambiguous. Are they imagining it, or is it a result of the cult magic? And the answer is, doesn't matter. We can do anything we want.
Yeah. Let me see here what else I have in my notes. Okay, the obvious setup. Because that symbol, I started seeing that symbol everywhere from the necklace.
Sure.
Like Joan's ring, it kind of looked like it could have been there on her ring. The doormat, when she had her come in for tea, when she lifted the teacup, it looked like the symbol was underneath the teacup. Because it was
I didn't notice most of this.
Like that felt like really obvious. Like I couldn't tell you because I didn't go back and like, oh, is that really what I seen kind of thing, but it just kind of felt like it was there.
Yeah,
maybe that was what the director wanted you to do, is like, oh, is that it, you know? Which if that's the case, then that's cool, because I like when the movies try to make you play along.
Well, and so it's cool world building, and if there's going to be supernatural, then sure, it's clever on the part of the director to, how can I work this stuff in less obvious places? At the end of the day, if you remove the supernatural stuff and then that symbol's not there, there's still the same scenes of the same things happening with or without the supernatural causing it.
Yeah, that's true.
So it's it's a plus and a negative. It's creative. It adds something if you're looking for it. It's the director paying attention to the small details. it also doesn't need to be there.
Right. I had another note here. The mother was annoyingly realistic. Like,
Annoyingly.
There was a lot of ugly crying.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot of yelling, and it wasn't pretty.
Mm-hmm.
Like movie pretty. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And it actually made me uncomfortably angry. Like hearing her yell. It was very discomforting.
Oh, it's definitely a plus. I mean, you're getting into the acting in general here, and everyone is great, and the mother was definitely the standout here.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like she was like, as much as the character building that they did on the mom, I feel like they could have added more of that to Peter to make them both decent to good instead of the mom being a really good character. Because like there was a lot going on with Peter. Like he was a music kid.
Sure.
You know, they did have like a small segment after Charlie died where he went through like a PTSD sort of thing. And something that was like a big trigger for him was like when he was smoking weed underneath the bleachers after Charlie died. He was smoking a bong when Charlie said that she thinks her throat was getting bigger.
Right.
And when he smoked weed again,
right,
it triggered that exact moment.
Yeah.
Like I thought that was a cool effect.
It's clever and it's attention to detail and it doesn't require the supernatural. It's awesome.
Right.
And I get what you're saying where
most of his character was affected by supernatural instead of real events, in my opinion.
And didn't need to be.
Right.
And until, the last maybe 15 minutes where everything, reaches its climax.
Right.
He has a lot of spooky stuff going on with like when he spontaneously slams his face off the school desk, or sees
that scene was really good.
Looking
actually,
back at him, it was terrifying. It was awesome. It was creative, and it didn't need to be supernaturally influenced. We're watching a scary movie, and he's going crazy because something terrifying happened to him. That's all I need.
Yeah.
End of story.
I feel like you have a special kind of hatred for supernatural horror movies.
That's the thing, though, is I don't. I absolutely don't. I have no issue in general with supernatural storytelling. My problem is this story didn't need it. The stuff that wasn't about the supernatural was terrifying enough on its own, is the thing.
Yeah. Okay, that's fair.
The Exorcist is fantastic, and it requires the supernatural. The Witch is one of my favorite movies of all time. It requires the supernatural. That story doesn't work without it.
Which
this movie works without it.
I'm going to break away from this for a minute. The Witch, was that the movie you had me watch with you that I just kept making us laugh throughout the entire thing?
Yeah, you ruined it making fun of the accent.
It was so funny. Okay, I had another note here about Peter. I had Peter has PTSD, but did Peter's character seem like unrealistically whiny and scared?
No, because that aspect of his personality isn't like, if he was like that before the traumatic incident, I would say, yeah, this is a little ridiculous. Why is this kid of this age and maturity level behaving this way? But
yeah,
the several scenes we get of him freaking out and screaming and whining and whatnot, that's all at appropriate moments. I mean, it happens very frequently, but it's because he thinks his mom's trying to kill him, so that's fair. Okay,
yeah, I guess maybe I was a little too harsh on his character.
As for your earlier point about the mother kind of being the focus and the other actors not being as, given as much to work with, I see what you're saying, and she definitely is the most compelling character for that reason, just having the most to work with. But Peter, I still find his personality and his reactions, I still find it all realistic and compelling. Like I'm not sure if he was meant to be kind of a quiet kid beforehand. The incident happens really early, but he could very well, on top of already being maybe a quiet kid to begin with, his reaction to this incident is to just shut down and be quiet the overwhelming majority of the time. And
yeah, I would have liked to have seen Peter before the accident.
And it seems like an appropriate response to me. Like, from the moment the incident happens, I'm thinking to myself, what happens with my life from this moment forward? And I think that was exactly it. I think I shut down and I hardly speak to anyone ever again. I think that's the realistic reaction to that. And honestly, his reaction to that specific moment, not speaking a word, being afraid to look over to the passenger seat, driving home, not saying a word to anyone, climbing into his bed, waiting for the reaction. I think that's exactly... I think that's the real reaction. I think that's what pretty much anybody does.
That one was really good. Like, I commend that one because it felt super like, because what do you do in that situation? You know what I mean? Like, what do you do?
Exactly.
And
what are your other options?
Exactly. Yeah. Not to mention the stuff that follows after the accident with the mom, where it starts when she goes to grief counseling for her mom, and like you get the history of like her brother being schizophrenic, her mother has DID, has DID or had, depending on how you look at it. And like there was a lot of mental health issues, and then like the scene that kind of messed with me, where I thought it was going to go supernatural, was when she was creating a replica with her miniature figures of the accident. And I'm like, oh God, here we go. And nothing stemmed from it. Like there was no horror or anything about it. She was just doing it because she was going crazy. I feel like her mental health.
Right, and it's a good enough reason for it on its own.
Right, exactly. Like I feel like she I have some friends who are into, like the occult history. And like I've learned that for possession, for example, you need to be in a very weakened mental state. That makes sense. Like constantly reliving the accident, and towards the end when she, I'm assuming, gets possessed, like it all leads up to that, which is fine. That's cool with me. It makes sense. The one character that I wish did have more was the dad, believe it or not, because when he did have anything to say, he felt like the reviewer of the movie. Like, no, that's not what's going on. This isn't what's going on. I think you're crazy. I think you need help. I need, you're freaking me out, and I need to protect my son from you now. Like that whole everything with him was awesome. Especially
you're given three very different reactions to the inciting incident. You're given the mother's reaction being rage towards her family. You get the brother's reaction, that's to become quiet and scared and fragile and break down.
Survivor's guilt.
Yeah, and then you get the dad who, for the sake of the family, is just trying to keep his cool and not be upset and not be mad at anyone, and to just, to understand that what the son did was the cult aside an accident. And is anyone's reaction really wrong? They're all understandable.
Right.
Three very different reactions, and they're all understandable. Like even, understanding that Peter's reaction, or understanding that what Peter did is an accident, you still don't blame the mom for being mad when you can easily imagine being in her headspace, and it's not unfair.
Right.
But however, in any case, the father with the calm, collected view gets the least to do here.
Right. I'm trying to formulate how I want to say this, because the argument when they're at dinner, that was something that felt, I don't want to say the word relatable, but I've had arguments like this.
Yeah.
And with my parents, and it took me back to that uncomfortable, like, oh shit. You know what I mean? Like, even though like you knew everything was so static and nothing was going to happen, it's just like you can see the mental scars forming as it's all like playing out. That's when I think the mom started losing her mind. And then that was before she tried calling the ghost, right?
I'm not sure.
I can't remember, but I had a note here that said obvious setup, and that was with Joan. Like, not at first, it wasn't obvious, because like I said, I couldn't see the ring and if it had the symbol on it. But when she met her at the art store, like she could have very well just bought that chalkboard right then and there. And then the whole seance-y shit, and it's like, oh, come on. Like, we're really going to do this? Like,
when we could alternatively not.
Or we can make it so that way the mom ends up being fucking crazy and she's just seeing the shit. And like you end the movie with, no, she was just crazy. Like all this horror, creepy, supernatural shit was just all in her head. That would have been a better ending.
Yeah.
Well, I like the ending, but it's one of those things where it would have been...
Given that they did decide to make it a supernatural story and that they established it in the beginning, it's as good an ending as I could have asked for in that circumstance. I think any ending you get out of not making it a supernatural story is still better.
Yeah, because how the fuck, like, okay, the ending of this movie ends with resurrecting one of the 8 princes of hell.
Mm-hmm.
You gonna make a sequel to get all 8 princes resurrected? Are you?
I assume not. I assume they just decided that was less generic than just, oh, it's Satan. It's literally Satan.
Yeah. Which
are 8 princes of hell actually a biblical concept? I've never heard of this. I don't even know if that's an actual thing or if they made it up for. Is Paimon an actual deity of the Bible? In any case, I don't think it was sequel setup. I think it was just less generic than it's Satan, or less generic than just a demon.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's
fair. All. Yeah, that's fair. Because it felt too... I think it would have felt too weak if it was just a demon, but too overbearing if it was the devil.
Mm-hmm.
So they went with something in between.
I did ask my wife while the credits are rolling, so what does Paimon do now? How does he in this kid's body take over the world? Or whatever his goal is. So he's got this body of this crazy kid that no one is going to take seriously or put in any position of power. And
right
now what?
Yeah, exactly. But getting away from that again, sorry, we're jumping back and forth here. Here's the part that I didn't get in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
The fucking notebook.
Okay.
I'm going to set it in the fire. Oh, shit. I start turning on fire. I throw it in the fire again. The dad dies.
I'm not going to try to explain how any of that works because supernatural ain't got to explain shit.
And, you know what we forgot to mention was the grave being desecrated, the grandmother's grave, because the body was in the attic. How'd it get there? How?
Doesn't matter. Demons.
Magic.
No further questions.
There's so fucking... There's so much going on that you forget as an oversight in this movie.
Mm-hmm.
Let me refer back to my notes here real quick. Do you have anything you want to add?
No, I think I've made my point. That the acting is all awesome and the directing's awesome and the editing's awesome. And I love a lot of this movie. And it was a tragic mistake to make it supernatural when it didn't need it.
Yeah.
That's my summary.
Enough. I guess I'm the one leading the spotlight then.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So here's my notes. Mom sees demons. Mom goes nuts. Mom sees grandma's body in attic. Dad burns to death. Spider-Man mom.
Am I alone in finding shots like that to always be funny and not scary?
They're funny because like once you see them, you're like, oh, what? How do they not know? You know what I mean? Well,
the obliviousness of the characters aside, how realistic it is that you would miss that aside.
Right.
That shot just never, I don't know. It's a trope in horror now, and it just never works for me.
Okay, we had Spider-Man mom. Okay, hiding in the corner of the bedroom.
Mm-hmm.
And then we just see her gotta go fasting, like behind him when he turns. And then he goes downstairs, sees the dad burned to death. And she's in the corner again, all like Tom Clancy, Spider-Man. And this is one of the parts that freaked me out.
Well, and why is she being stealthy when she can move that fast? Doesn't matter. Demons ain't gotta explain shit.
Well, hang on. because here's the other thing. We see the dad burned to death just sitting there, and she's in the corner, which I still think is funny. Like, it was creepy and funny at the same time because you're waiting for the jump scare. It's one of those things where you're like, I know it's going to try and jump scare me, and I'm probably going to jump, but I'm still knowing it's going to happen. You know what I mean? And then he turns around, and then there's just this naked man just smiling. Like,
why
in
is
the
he naked?
distance.
I don't know. Demons ain't God explain shit.
Well, here's the thing. Like, I couldn't tell if it was like the dad's like spirit, like just smiling creepily at him.
Sure.
And like just not being able to distinguish anything else but that fucking smile. That was terrifying. Like, it was just creepy. And then mom is like, come here, boy, and like chases him throughout the house. And then you get the funniest scene where he goes in the attic. She does a Spider-Man again, but decides to try and be the Kool-Aid man at the same time and just headbutts the ceiling. She's just like, oh, that was so funny to me. And then I was another classic horror trope where I looked at my wife and I was like, that was the dumbest thing. He should have went outside because she obviously set up the attic for him. And she's like, what do you mean? And then he turns around and all the candles are laid out. Like, everything else is laid out. And then just naked people just sitting in the attic looking at him. Just naked. No big. And then he jumps out the window. Obviously dies. Charlie's like, oh, hey, nice body. I'm going to borrow it. And then, well, yeah, I forgot the mom like sawing her head off, which that looked really perverted. And I'm glad no one's seen that except you. Okay, so
well, hey, since you're mentioning the attic, and I've mentioned there being just some really cool shots and editing here and there.
Yes.
I love the camera angles in the attic where the camera's from a perspective that has to be outside the attic and you're getting like a cross section. It's like you're playing The Sims and you're outside the attic, but the roof and the walls facing you are cut out so you see the inside. It was a really cool shot. I don't think I've seen that anywhere else in film. Yeah,
that was a really cool shot for sure. What wasn't cool after it is when Charlie wakes up. She's Peter now. you know, typical Charlie things.
Yeah.
And then you see the mom float into the tree, the tree house. That felt so stupid. Like, you could play like something video game music over it. It just makes it completely funny instead of it being scary.
No, just exactly.
Like, that did not scare me. It made me laugh.
If there's one moment in any of the movie that like scared and startled me, it was just Peter slamming his face off the desk.
Yes.
Which is completely rooted in, realism without the supernatural. Like, the supernatural stuff at the end was all just, well, I guess the shot of the mother cutting her own head off will stick with me, but
yeah,
it didn't scare me. It didn't startle me. I didn't care what was happening from there to the end of the movie. Like, it wasn't like terrifying because it felt like it was obvious because they showed the three heads and reawakening the prince. But the noise, that's what messed with me most. It's good sound work. There's a lot of sound work.
Yeah.
But you can still hear it after Peter goes out the window. And then the thud. And then you hear the thud.
Yeah.
Good editing, that was good sound work.
Yeah, the sound work in this movie is phenomenal. And then,
but it's happening at a point where I no longer care about the story.
Yeah, and then after the mom, just, I don't know, what would you call it? Just like object placement in video games, where you just see like somebody like just like, okay, let me click on this model here and drag it up into the treehouse. You go in there and then Charlie looks into a mirror, basically, which the head was kind of creepy because like the eyes turned yellow. Like, did they put like little light bulbs in it, or was it demons? Like, because this thing was obviously an ornamental thing. Yeah, at this point of the movie, you're just like, okay, I see what you're doing.
Anything can happen at this point, and you can make up symbolism in any of it. Anything. I don't know. Birds are involved somehow. There could be a 20-foot pigeon that just crashes into the house and destroys it and then says, I am Paimon. That could have happened. Because anything can happen at this point.
He's Paimon?
And when literally anything can happen, I don't care what happens.
Opposite of Creditmon? Opposite of Debitmon?
Jeez. All right. Do we have any further points here?
Okay. I think
at the end of the day, I'm interested in following this director/writer, and that's why we're doing this spotlight, is so we could see. I'm going to get this pronunciation wrong, but so that we can spotlight Midsommar.
Yeah. That movie looks. I haven't seen a trailer. Like, I've seen half of a trailer.
Me either.
Of that movie. But to wrap up my thoughts on this movie, it was good. It was really good. I enjoyed it. Some of the horror elements felt way too obvious, though. If maybe there were less supernatural elements up until the end, and maybe it ending up being the mom was crazy all along or something, I might have liked it more.
I think having the supernatural at the end and not establishing it earlier would have pissed me off more.
Probably. That felt like it would have felt like a cop out, but the movie was paced well.
It would have felt like felt like he was writing it without the intention of horror, and then went, oh, how do I get myself out of this third act?
Right. But it was good regardless, because even though supernatural demons, anything can happen, bad.
It was paced very well. It gets really right. Pacing, pacing's
the
perfect.
pacing was phenomenal. Audio and visual cues, fantastic.
Yeah.
The discomfort level, it was up there. It was good.
Yeah, I mean, we don't give ratings on this show, but at the end of the day, it's more good than bad. I recommend
Absolutely.
it.
It was a good movie.
There's specific shots and scenes that are masterpieces. I think people should see it. I'm disappointed that the thing that's wrong with it for me is a really big wrong. That at the end of the day doesn't drag it down to being bad, but it drags it away from the masterpiece it could have been.
Yeah. Fair enough. That would be cool.
If you think it's a masterpiece and I'm an idiot, tell me that too.
Yeah, tell Dalton he's an idiot anyways. I'm cool with that. But all right, guys. I think we're all done here.
Thanks for listening, and keep an eye out for our Midsommar Spotlight.
Goodbye.
Have a good one.